Helljumpers, Chapter 9, Nightmares and Dreams. Smoke and fire surrounded her. Scootaloo coughed as she inhaled the fumes, her eyes furiously prickling. She started to run in an attempt to get out of the smoke and assess her situation. She found a door and bucked it open immediately, jumping outside to get some fresh air. Finally outside, she looked back at the building that she had jumped out of. Sugar Cube Corner. She quickly looked around and saw every other building was also on fire. Corpses of ponies lay scattered all over the street, burn marks over their bodies, or in some cases, purple or gray bolts sticking out of them.
Lyra!
She saw the mint-colored unicorn perched against a bench with a needle around in her stomach. A quick sprint later, and she was sitting next to Lyra trying to quell the bleeding.
Scootaloo?
She asked with a frail voice, only to start violently coughing up blood.
I don't understand. They just started shooting these weird weapons at us while we only wanted to greet them.
She continued.
I'm scared, Scootaloo.
Her voice was losing volume quickly.
Stay with me, Lyra.
Scootaloo pleaded, trying to quell the bleeding.
Lyra, talk to me.
She didn't receive an answer.
Lyra?
She looked at the unicorn who had slumped against the bench, eyes wide open. She checked for a pulse, finding none. She respectfully closed the mare's eyes, leaving a streak of blood to cover her face. Scootaloo looked down at her body and found that she had been covered in blood trying to stop the bleeding. The other thing she spotted was a black item perched against the bench, an SMG. She picked up the weapon and checked if there was ammo in it, a full clip. A glint of light drew the attention of the filly again, holding the gun under her wing, and she walked over to the spot where the light had come from, finding that there was a combat knife embedded in a wooden plank. She pulled it out of the wood and, for the time being, held it in her mouth since she had nothing on her to safely store the knife. That was the moment she heard plasma fire followed by some ponies screaming, and she rushed over to where the scream came from. Along the way, more corpses lined the road, some of which Scootaloo recognized before arriving at Town Hall, where 7 grunts were firing their plasma pistols at the building. Scootaloo could see ponies in the building desperately trying to barricade themselves in. Letting out a growl, she grabbed the SMG and opened fire on the grunts, the suppressed weapon only letting out soft sounds as the subsonic ammo left the magazine, cutting down 5 of the grunts before the gun clicked, signaling that it was empty. Throwing the gun aside, Scootaloo charged the remaining 2 grunts, keeping the knife in her mouth until she was close enough to use it. The remaining 2 grunts started panicking at the sight of the charging Pegasi, making them easy targets. The first one went down by a slice through the throat, cutting off its methane supply, and the second one didn't get far either, as Scootaloo made another dash and rammed the blade into the skull of the little alien.
Coast is clear, every pony.
She shouted at the town hall, while pulling the knife out of the grunts. The door to the building slowly opened, revealing a group of ponies. Her heart seemed to stop at the sight of the ponies inside of the building. The elements of harmony, minus Twilight, the Crusaders, Octavia, and Vinyl.
Scootaloo?
Applebloom asked carefully, seeing that the filly before her was covered in blood and holding a particularly large blade.
Applebloom?
She stammered, tears forming in her eyes.
Murderer!
Applebloom shouted, causing Scootaloo to flinch and drop the knife.
What? You're no sister of mine!
Rainbow Dash followed.
No, we should have just left you at that orphanage.
Vinyl shouted while Octavia stood beside her. Scootaloo started crying at that.
I was just trying to save you,
she sobbed.
You're not worthy of being a crusader. We don't want a pony with a cutie mark for murder amongst us.
Sweetie Belle also shouted.
I...
Scootaloo started, but stopped when she heard something behind her and reflexively grabbed the knife and got into a defensive stance. Standing in the smoke was one thing she never expected to see. Discord. She got ready to charge, but stopped when she looked at Discord's face. No malicious smile on it, like she had seen it before. Sorrow. He looked genuinely sorrowful. Before Scootaloo could ask him why he was, there were 2 light blue beams of plasma sticking out of her torso, putting her in a state of agony. Her vision began to blur as she felt the energy sword twisting in her back, looking over at who stabbed her. Rainbow Dash.
Equestria is better off without you,
she heard Rainbow say before her vision faded to black. Scootaloo shot up from her bunk, covered in sweat and breathing heavily, looking around the room, remembering that she was on board the Stalwart Dawn. A glance at the datapad next to her bunk told her that she had only gotten about 5 hours of sleep. Not in the mood to get any more sleep, she got out of the bunk and grabbed her black bodysuit, that now had the rank of private knitted onto it. After making her bed to perfection, something she would have never done in Equestria happened. She made her way to the showers. The nightmare had not been a singular event. Every time she had gone to sleep ever since she had gotten back to the dawn, her dreams had been haunted by the sights of dead ponies and her friends yelling at her. Although the appearance of Discord had been a major anomaly from the other nightmares, in any case, it was safe to say that the 3 days she had been on the dawn hadn't left her particularly rested. Arriving at the shower, she found them empty, which was peculiar since spaceships don't have a day and night cycle, so finding any room unoccupied was a rare sight. She got into one of the shower booths and cleaned herself from the sweat, and after finishing the shower, she put on the bodysuit and made her way to the mess hall. The sight of the pony walking through the hallways wasn't too disturbing for most of the crew on the Dawn. It had been the ship that had been picking up the ponies in the first place, so the entire crew had already heard about them at some point. The reputation boost from their action in New Alexandria admittedly also helped. Finally arriving at the mess hall, she made her way to the coffee machine. Not because she particularly liked the substance, but the caffeine was a good way to start a day. She also grabbed a few packets of food from a dispenser. The real food was available on the ship for some occasions, but the packages were simply a more cost-effective way to store the food. After finishing her breakfast, she made her way to the gym to get some exercises done. The gym was occupied by a squad of 5 Marines that were practicing hand-to-hand combat. Scootaloo simply ignored them for the moment and started lifting some weights. For the next 10 minutes, she could see the Marines glancing in her direction, so every now and then, to the point that she was getting really annoyed with the soldiers.
You know I can talk, right?
She said when she caught another one glancing in her direction. The Marines were caught off guard. They had expected to just be ignored by the pony like she had been doing since she had entered the room. "You're one of the aliens the crew had been talking about, aren't you?" one of them asked.
Yeah. So?
Scootaloo responded while continuing with her exercises. "Well, we just thought the crew was pulling a prank on the new guys."
So, you thought the entire crew had banded together just to prank you? Seriously?
Maybe? The Marine scratched his neck. Scootaloo resisted the urge to face off.
Okay. You guys seen any action yet?
No. We just got transferred to the ship right out of boot camp. Apparently they needed to replace a team they lost, the Marine replied. "My name is Nick Zuyev, by the way," holding out his hand.
Scootaloo,
she said, shaking the hand with her hoof.
So you boys mind if I train with you for a bit? And the rest of my squad is still sleeping.
Nick shrugged. Oh, I'm fine with it. You guys okay with her training along? The other 4 Marines grunted their approval. Okay. So, if you're gonna train with us, then I want a sparring match with you, one of them said. Really, Hopper? How are you even gonna spar with her different body structure?
You'd be surprised,
Scootaloo said with a grin as she stood up on her hind legs, surprising everyone with how easy she presumably found it to stand on her hind legs. Well, that makes things more interesting, Hopper said with a grin. You have specialized sparring gear? Scootaloo nodded and dropped back on all 4 of her hooves. No need to give him a chance to study the way she moved on 2 legs. Walking up to a locker that had Tyler's Shadowbolt logo on it, he immediately claimed the locker after getting onto the Dawn and made it theirs. Grabbing padding for her lower legs, wings, and 2 gloves, the last thing she grabbed was the plastic mouthguard. Her teeth already having a few chips missing, she didn't need to lose more parts of them because she got hit in the face while training. Strapping all the protection on, she stepped into the ring, and Hopper was already standing at the ready in the corner of his side of the ring. "So, ready to get beaten, chicken?" he said. Scootaloo's heart rate went up, but the look on the Marine's face told her all she needed to know. He was trying to rile her up, so she attacked him in rage. Calmed down a bit, Scootaloo went into the familiar trance she had whenever she was training hand-to-hoof combat. This state of mind gave her improved reaction times and simply allowed her more time to analyze her opponent. Maria 062 had compared it to an inferior version of Spartan time, which was still better than that of regular humans by quite a margin. The side effect of getting that focused was that her face remained completely neutral, which really unnerved the watching Marines. Hey, Dawn to Scoot... The moment Hopper spoke, he left a small gap in his defense, prompting Scootaloo into a charge. With a mighty flap of her wings, she closed the distance between herself and her opponent, and threw a few quick punches before quickly retreating to a safe distance, so he couldn't retaliate. "Damn! Oh, that was fast!" Nick said, astonished at the speed of the attack. Scootaloo slipped from trance to allow a grin to form on her face.
What's wrong? Chicken too fast for you?
Hopper by this point had recovered from her quick attack and charged her, trying to hit her with a right hook, forgetting that Scootaloo had more than just her forelegs to hit him. Scootaloo ducked under the punch and extended her right wing, turning her body and moving the wings so that it slammed into the Marine's stomach. Getting hit by the wing caused Hopper to grasp his stomach, giving Scootaloo the opening to throw a devastating blow with her left hoof to the back of the head of the Marine. Hopper dropped to the ground of the ring, letting out a loud grunt.
I think I'm done.
Scootaloo wasn't completely surprised. If it wasn't for the padding, getting hit by the bone in a Pegasi wing would feel like getting hit by a steel bat. Good lordy, laddie, you sure know how to fight, don't you? One of the watching Marines said.
Learning from the best. It also helps that my reaction speed is closer to that of a Spartan than a regular human,
Scootaloo said, falling back on all fours and closing her wings.
Really? But how can you be sure of that?
Hopper asked while massaging his stomach.
Well, because I got beaten in a submission by one on a regular basis while practicing CQB and training, and she noticed that I was able to block several of her strikes that with a normal reaction time would have hit,
she explained.
We later tested my reaction time further and found that it was actually nearly as fast as her own.
Damn! You gotta meet a Spartan? Oh, I mean, could you teach us some of her tricks?
Hopper asked excitedly, and Scootaloo chuckled.
I might be able to give you guys some pointers.
The Marines and Scootaloo spent the next 2 hours improving their hand-to-hand combat and some knife fighting. In the end, the Marines and Scootaloo shared their sleeping roster so they would get another opportunity for some training together.